Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 105, recording on Wednesday, August 20th. Emergency podcast. We don't do a ton of these. All seriousness, I was planning to do one regardless this evening, and then I started to get some texts that Harrison Phillips, first, that there was maybe a trade. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, who's being traded? And then you try to figure out where that player's being traded to and what the return is and what that means. And so that has led us to a podcast that we will begin talking about Harrison Phillips. There's a couple other things I want to get into throughout the podcast, and some of them are just tangential and avenues and runways directly off of this deal that's occurring on Wednesday afternoon. So we'll get into all of that here quickly on the Alec Lewis Show. If you've missed it, been locked and loaded at The Athletic. We had a story on Monday from one of my colleagues, Jordan Rodrigue, on Josh Metellus. I followed that Tuesday with something on Theo Jackson, and then Wednesday, story that I've been working on for a year on Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. Tried to give you as revealing of a look of the Vikings general manager as I could. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and then we'll be back Thursday with something on Max Brosmer that is pretty in-depth. Had some conversations, talked to PJ Fleck and some others, so stay tuned for that. This show, as always, is presented by First Resource Bank. It's a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the guys very, very soon. Tim Siegley, Charlie Anderson, Aaron Siegley, they run the thing. They care about the community. They care about the team. So please go check out First Resource Bank. And then the last bit of housekeeping before we hop right into Harrison Phillips' conversation is, if you're new on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It helps us out. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart or wherever you get podcasts, you can rate and review and all that good stuff. I'm hosting Paul Allen's show on KFAN from the Fair on Friday. So if you come to the Fair Friday morning, come say hey and listen to some Vikings talk. But yeah, that'll do it there. So Harrison Phillips, all right. If you guys missed it, or let's say you're just tuning in on YouTube, you don't really know what's going on. What are you talking about, Alec? Harrison Phillips, I've been driving, I've been at work. What are you talking about? Well, here's what I'm talking about. The Vikings agreed to terms with the New York Jets, where they are going to trade Harrison Phillips and a 2027 seventh-round pick to the Jets in return for a 2026 sixth-rounder and a 2027 sixth-rounder. The deal, as always, it's pending a physical, but those are the terms. Also, as part of the deal, the Vikings are going to pick up half of Harrison Phillips' $7.4 million base salary, meaning the Vikings will save approximately $3.7 million in cap for 2025. Here's where we'll begin. So, Harrison Phillips, I'm not even sure if I appreciated. He started 51 games for this team over the last 3 years. I mean, you want to talk about Iron Man durability, and I can just go through instances and moments in my head of him, limping through the locker room on a Wednesday or Thursday of game week. I can go through many weeks where he is on the injury report, and I mean, it is DNPs throughout the week, and then somehow he plays. He goes through a Lions game and comes out of that with serious back stuff, and he ends up playing the next week. That's just who this guy was. A related aspect of that was just his leadership internally. I mean, he was the NFLPA rep for this team for multiple years. He's a Stanford grad, just as sharp as they come, aware of the dynamics across the league, was always phenomenal with the media, but a captain, a voice on Kevin O'Connell's leadership staff, often had answers if you wanted to ask about culture or team building or why this organization has had success. He had a voice and a perspective on that transcended, a lot of people, if not everybody internally. And so, all that stuff should be noted. Over the last 3 years, 7 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, 6.5 sacks. He had 21 run stops last year, and part of the reason Brian Flores' defense last year was so freaking good was he and Jonathan Bullard on the interior of the line of scrimmage defensively. They two-gapped. Like, they played the run. They had an awareness in the run of, I mean, I remember having a conversation with Harrison Phillips where he was talking through last year's Falcons game and how the Falcons ran their wide zone so effectively, and how between series, he and Jonathan Bullard and defensive staff were talking about adjusting techniques and where to line up to be able to counteract it moving forward. Like, he, in terms of intricacies of run stopping, of line of scrimmage play, he just was incredibly sharp and is incredibly aware, and it's why he will have a huge role on the Jets defense this year, and why you could understand why the Jets would have wanted to make this happen. So the question you guys are asking is probably, okay, you've done 3 minutes, Alec, of raving about Harrison Phillips. Why then would the Vikings be willing to part ways with him and pay half of his salary for 2 6-round picks and recouping some cap space? And the answer to that is manyfold. I could probably start in any specific one of the 3 areas that I'm about to talk about, but the first one I'll talk about is, I mean, this defensive line interior defender room has been just freaking loaded. It is freaking loaded. And the credit should go to Marcus Dixon, the D-line coach, for the job he's done, and Marjay Arbery, who works closely with Marcus Dixon. Like, those guys have developed this group. But the Vikings obviously wanted to enhance the interior pass rush part of this group. And so it's why they paid for Jonathan Allen, and it's why they paid for Javon Hargrave this spring. When those two happen, yes, there was the possibility that Harrison Phillips would align in the interior as a kind of a nose tackle between those two. And that, I mean, that was kind of the vision at that point. But then what happened is the Vikings drafted Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, who can play in the interior, who can play as an edge defender, and who can rush the passer and has really come on. You have Jalen Redmond, who played really, really well last year in his brief spurts. Obviously came kind of out of nowhere, was an undrafted guy, bounced around with the Panthers practice squad. Then he goes to the UFL. Then Ryan Grigson brings his name to Brian Flores, and they eventually signed Jalen Redmond, and he's done nothing but improve since he walked in the door. And I've had many people internally tell me that, like, he has taken another leap this training camp, and you see it. Like, I guarantee you there were Patriots staffers walking away like, who the hell was 61? Because that guy was obliterating us, and we did not expect that. So you got Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. You got Jalen Redmond. Levi Drake Rodriguez was a 7th-round pick. They knew he would need some developmental time to find comfort at this level. And it's felt like, throughout the spring, throughout the summer, early in training camp, it kind of, you got the sense that he'd started to come on in terms of like play strength and physicality at this level. Then you've got Taki Taimani, who was an undrafted player from Oregon, who made the roster last year, and who, before he had a serious ankle injury last year, like displayed a willingness to stop the run at a very impressive level. And so, did you need Harrison Phillips and Taki Taimani? It was a question that I wondered in my head. And then behind those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you've got this undrafted player this year from Morgan State, Elijah Williams. Eli is what they call him. And he has, Brian Baldinger, who doesn't miss on terms of film evaluation, has hyped him up plenty of times. Brian Flores mentioned his name for the first time like 3 weeks ago. Kevin O'Connell's talked about watching his film. So you got really 7 guys who are worthy of a roster spot at bare minimum. And this is not even talking about the other aspects of the roster, kind of, where it'd be nice to maybe steal a number or two at a certain position. So that's one facet to why this team would be okay parting with Harrison Phillips. The other, other 2 elements have to do with the draft capital and the cap space recruit. I'll start with the draft capital. Like, this Vikings team does not want to find itself in a situation for the 2026 draft like it was in 2025. They believe strongly that for this thing to work moving forward from a long-term, like, team-building process, you're going to have to replenish this roster with young players that you draft with upside, who don't come at a premium cost. Like when J.J. McCarthy's contract is what it is right now, you can pay free agents and feel okay about that. But the longer this goes and the more success that J.J. McCarthy has, the more expensive he's obviously going to be, which means you're going to need to pull monetarily from somewhere, and the hope would be that you draft players. So they're not going to want to part with 4 picks for X receiver, X cornerback. They want to have a bounty of picks for the 2026 draft. And so by recouping 2 6-rounders, one for 26 and one for 27, you're even further supplementing kind of your cupboard of draft capital if you do want to go make a trade, whether that's right now for a receiver depth or a punt returner or what have you, or whether that's in the future. Let's say around the trade deadline when you need picks to trade. So that's the second layer of it. You got the amount of players in the defensive line room have really come on. You've got the draft capital that you can return and retain right now to be able to use at your disposal. And then there's the cap space. Like the Vikings have structured their cap space where they want to have enough to use if they need to use it this year because of the commitment for this year, but they also like the idea of rolling it over to help next year and to manage the cap that way. So to recoup $3.7 million in cap space just allows you more buffer to, yes, you can make a move now and you'll still have enough to roll over for next year. So that's really like the 3-pronged way to look at it. And it's, again, like it's tough because Harrison Phillips, I mean, he's been incredible for this community. Again, as a media member, I can't thank him enough for the amount of time he spent explaining, the most intricate defensive things that I could barely understand. Like, I mean, we talked a lot about movement on the front and stemming the front and why, they're able to align in certain techniques and the smarts that entails. Like that, you don't just find guys who have like the aptitude for that. But it's one of those risk reward things. And internally they weighed the potential benefits of the cap space, of the draft capital, of the potential to keep 1 or 2 young players in that room that continue to develop and have upside. And so that's really like the Harrison Phillips conversation. That's how I know to sum it up in a 10-minute kind of brief stint and sequence. And so now we'll see, like, do they use the cap space for a receiver? I'm about to talk about the receiver position and depth. Do they use do they use some of the cap space on a cornerback? Do they use the draft capital as a pick swap in a trade to where now they retain the amount of draft capital they plan for 2026? All of that stuff, again, that's the balance of this deal. And I fully expect Harrison Phillips to go to the New York Jets and to really help Aaron Glenn's defense. Like, it's not much of a surprise. And the smarts that he has to be able to bring Aaron Glenn some of what the Vikings have done, like I wouldn't be shocked at that as well. But that's the summary, kind of the takeaway, the most intricate way I know to explain this move. Hopefully that provides some perspective for you guys. All right, there's 4 more things I want to hit here pretty briefly. The first is the receiver depth. So you guys know Jordan Addison is going to be suspended for the first 3 games. That was planned for. That was expected. What was not planned for was Justin Jefferson, kind of the slow ramp up to week 1. Now, I fully expect him to be ready and ready to rock for week 1. He's been out on the practice field last couple days, not really taken part of full team drills, but it's fine. He's got, let's just think about it, half a week, another week. And then, 2.5 weeks essentially lead up until the first game. So don't have any worry about Justin Jefferson. But the Vikings expected to have Jalen Naylor, who filled in early last year once Jordan Addison went down with the ankle injury after the week 1 game against the New York Giants. And Jalen Naylor last week in joint practice against the Patriots, he jammed his left hand, was not on the sidelines on Saturday for the second preseason game, and then has not been out on the practice field, or was not during training camp availability this week. Expect that hand to be pretty whatever word you want to use, sore, bruised. I also expect him to miss some time here. Now, does that mean 2.5 weeks and then he's ready for week one? I don't have the intel to be able to say he would miss week one or he's not going to miss week one. I also, from what Kevin O'Connell has said publicly, don't expect it to be a major long-term thing, but to be able, now you look at that receiver room, and today at training camp, Ty Felton, the rookie receiver, he had a little bit of an injury. I think he's going to be fine, but Ty Felton might go out. He was out at he was out at the training camp practice today, and so the three receivers without Jordan Addison. And without Justin Jefferson and without Ty Felton, it was Jay Sean Jones, Lucky Jackson, and Thayer Thomas. And those guys have put in a lot of work. They've all shown some good things. But the confidence that Kevin O'Connell is going to have in a group like that or in players like that in week one, I mean, that is a bold ask for guys who have never played in meaningful NFL downs. And so Tom Pelissero reported it Wednesday morning. Diana Rossini at The Athletic confirmed it after. But I fully expect the Vikings to be in the wide receiver market. Now, you guys are probably like, well, who are names? What makes sense? And is Adam Thielen a part of it? And what about KJ Osborne? And who else? And I would say that I don't have specific names right now, nor do I think the Vikings are pigeonholing themselves into one or two names. I would say the criteria that I would think about, that I would look at, is a player who has some familiarity with what this system is going to ask of you, whether that's you were in San Francisco, whether that's you were in Los Angeles, whether that's you've played in a rhythm and it doesn't even have to be those two. Like, let's say you played in a rhythm and timing based system and you have the smarts and the sharps to be able to pick this thing up quickly. If that's a skill set that's possible, I would not be surprised if that type of player would be a target. Now, Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne. First, would the Panthers part with Adam Thielen? Like, that'd be a question. Would the Vikings want to pay the amount of money that it might take to add Adam Thielen? Like, those are the questions. And then do the Vikings feel like he is dynamic enough for what they're seeking early on alongside Justin Jefferson? Like, that's the three-pronged questions there. With KJ Osborne, and we saw in his last year here, there were a bunch of drops that year, but he did know the system and all the positions really well. He is a willing blocker in the run blocking phase. Are the Commanders going to be willing to part with him? Their receiver situation is a question mark. Obviously, Terry McLaurin is dealing with his own contract situation. So of those two guys, that's the situation. The free agent class of Gabe Davis, of Odell Beckham, of Tyler Boyd, those guys have varying levels of experience with similar systems. They're also going to have varying amounts of, asks monetarily of what they want from the Vikings. And then the other aspect that I would mention and note is there are a lot of teams right now sifting in this market. Like the 49ers, they need receivers. Demarcus Robinson suspended for the first 3 weeks for them. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they need receivers as well. And so there are a bunch of others, even within similar systems, who are kind of seeking, lurking, monitoring the market that the Vikings are as well. So, we'll see what happens. But I would say this, I'd be pretty freaking surprised if the Vikings did not add a receiver, knowing just the depth situation. The question that I would really ask would be, is it just going to be one, or are they going to, be willing to seek two with the potential that one of them has a punt returning skill set? That wouldn't really surprise me at all, because I'll segue right into, one of the extra 4 points I wanted to make has to do with punt returner. Miles Price had a great, undrafted player from Indiana, has had an up and down training camp, had a great day Saturday in the return phase. And then today, speaking Wednesday, August 20th, he drops another return. And so, like, how much confidence can you really have in a guy who's really punt return only, kick return only? How much confidence can you really have when the bullets are flying in a guy like that who has, like last week, there was similarly, there was a drop on a return. So I've banged the drum going back to the spring on this team paying more attention to the punt return, punter, kick return aspects of the team, special teams. Like I've heard people say, like, they toss out Matt Daniels' name and criticism for that unit, but in my opinion, just the personnel has not risen to a level that you can expect incredible production from the special teams unit. And so, this team, they've believed that Ty Felton, the rookie receiver, who never did much returning at all in college at Maryland, could be a kick returner. And I understand, like, he has the size and speed in what is a physical play to maybe make the kick return situation work. But he's also, he's dropped a lot of passes as a receiver. So what's it going to be like under the lights in Chicago at Soldier Field with all of the pressure? How much faith can you really have in him to come through? And if it were me, like, I wouldn't have much faith. And I also think the kick return play this year is going to be a critical play that affects the margins of some of these games. And so you just would hope over the next week or what have you that the Vikings get creative in these respects, punt returner, kick returner, even punter. I mean, look, I'm not saying that they're going to go acquire a punter. They have Oscar Chapman. They have Ryan Wright, but neither of those two guys are going to trot back there and inspire fear in the opposing special teams coordinator. It's just the reality. And so we'll see how things go. But, like, special teams for me is a question mark because of the personnel right now. And I would be, I don't know if it's like, I just wouldn't be doing a good enough job if I didn't point it out, because it's been something that's been on my mind going back to the spring. Like, this team over the last 3 years has the lowest punt return average in the NFL. Last year, they had the lowest punt return average at 6.9 yards. And, like, the bar has been just don't muff the punt. But it really would be nice if you could generate 15 yards to give the offense even more of a boost, not to mention even the momentum in that respect. So that's a lot of special teams talk. It's going to be, in my opinion, like, if they don't supplement the group that they have right now over the next, 2.5 weeks, it's going to be something we'll probably revisit throughout the season. The only other two talkers, subjects I wanted to kick around. The first is cornerback. So, even before what happened Wednesday, I just felt like the depth of the room, it'd be nice to have someone else besides a Mekhi Blackman or a Dwight McGlothern or a Zemiah Vaughn who has experience, who in the event of injury to a Byron Murphy Jr., to Isaiah Rodgers, or to a Jeff Okudah, you would have comfort putting out there. Like, that's just how I felt. And then on Wednesday, I didn't see how things happened, but I spotted on the sidelines, Jeff Okudah was talking to the trainers. He took his shoe off. He took his socks off. They were looking at his leg. He ended up walking into the training room, looked a little frustrated. I haven't gotten word on whether it's serious or whether it's not. If it is serious, then the cornerback spot becomes another one where that cap space and draft capital might be necessary. And if it's not serious, I still believe if they can find someone who's cut on the waiver wire, or if even there's a trade possibility of free agent, like, that is a spot that I'd be eyeing and that I am eyeing over the next week. And then the last one that I wanted to just kick around is backup quarterback. Like, I still don't have a great feel for what's going to happen there. Can the Vikings find someone more reliable to be the number 2 than Sam Howell? Just not sure if that type of option is going to present itself. Maybe the Vikings feel like Sam Howell is a gamer and it can just work in their infrastructure if that situation presents itself. I don't know how much confidence I'd have in that. And then Max Brosmer as the number 2, like, that's been a lot of people have asked that. If they were to do it, to me, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. I say this without any intel, by the way. So if that gets accurate, that's just my opinion. But I will say, like, that does feel like a pretty bold move for a guy who was an undrafted rookie, who mentally I think is very, very sharp, and you'll see that in my story at The Athletic for Thursday. Like, I mean, that's his separator, that's his skill set. But like, those four position groups are worth eyeing over the next week, and that I will be talking to people about, texting people about, kicking it around on calls about, talking to people across the league, the receiver depth, the cornerback depth, special teams in general, punt returner, kick returner, punter, and then backup quarterback. And I expect Max Brosmer to get a lot of time on Friday night in Tennessee and Nashville. I'm not going to be there, but I will be glued. And we'll see, like, with the circumstances around him, probably playing with the twos and threes, a lot of the receivers are going to be trying to make their lasting impression. Like, it's going to be interesting to watch Max in that setting. But that's really kind of a quick hitter podcast for you. I'm going to be back this weekend at some point, probably with the final roster projection / any other tidbits that surface. If there's any other trades, if they acquire any receiver, maybe we'll hop in with another emergency. Like, I am locked the heck in over the next week. And I expect full, to be on at all times. And that's the part of the job that you got to love this time of year. If you missed it, like I've said, stories at The Athletic all week. The Wednesday one with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is something that I put a lot of time into. So if you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend going to check that out. Something on Max Brosmer Thursday that I'm proud of as well. The show is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area. And then we're going to have a lot of announcements and stuff coming in the next few weeks. Got some, I have a lot of stuff cooking behind the scenes that I'm pumped about. But thank you guys for being here. If you're here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, rate and review, all that good stuff. But we will talk to you guys very, very soon. That'll do it for episode 105 of The Alec Lewis Show.